Hey guys, in this tutorial we are going to use PHP to create, write, read and delete files from the server. PHP has built-in file system functions to make our task easy. Let's take a look at the functions that we are going to work with. Our first function is the touch function. With the touch function we can create a file. Next we have the file put contents function to create and write in a file at the same time. We can do the same thing with the fopen and the fwrite functions. Now to read a file we have the fopen and the fread functions. Also we can use the file get contents function to read the data from a file. And last we have the unlink function with which we delete files from the server's file system. We are going to see how to use all these functions to create and delete files. Now let's start by creating a file with a touch function. To use the touch function, we are going to write touch, and inside the parentheses we are going to write the name of the file we want to create. In our case, we're creating a file named newfile.txt. Now let's run the file and see if it works. The PHP file is loaded in the browser, so let's reload the page to run the file. Nice. If you look at the sidebar, you will see our new created file. But let's learn a few things about the touch function. Here says that the touch function sets access and modification time of the file. Let me explain this. Every file has a timestamp of the last time we opened it and changed something. The touch function sets the timestamp to the current time. But if the file does not exist, it will be created. And in our case today, this is what we want. Now the function returns true on success or false on failure. Knowing this, we can use an if statement to check if the function succeeded. If the function failed, we can show an error message, else we do something with the file. Now that's how the touch function works. Now let's see how to create and insert data to a file with a file put contents function. First of all, let's create first a line of text so we have something to insert in the file. Next, we are going to say file put contents. Now the function takes two arguments. The first argument is the file's path, and in the second argument we pass in the data we want to record. If the file exists, the function will open it and write the data in the file, but if the file does not exist, it will be created. Let's see this in action. I'm going to reload the browser, and we see that we have a new file in our root folder. If we open the file, we will see our line of text. Nice. Now let's insert a second line of text in the file. Let's run the file to see what happens. We see only the second line of text. That means that the file put contents function overrides any existing data. So to add data in an existing file, we have to use the file append flag. Let's run the file again to see what happens. Okay, we see now both lines of text, but this is not the result that I want. I want every record in a different line. Let's see how we do this. I will go to the end of our line of text and add line breaks. Let's run the file again. And much better now. Now this function returns on success the number of bytes that were written to the file, or false on failure. If I echo out the function and run the file, we get the number 24. This means that the data written on the file have a size of 24 bytes. We can also check with an if statement if the function succeeded. If the function returns false, we echo out an error, else we show a success message. Now that was the file put contents function. Let's see how we can do the same thing using the fopen and the fwrite functions. First of all, let's write fopen. The function takes 4 arguments, but we are going to use the main 2. So in the first argument we insert the file that we want to open or create, and as a second argument we are going to set the access mode. In our case we have the letter W. This means that we are open or creating a file to write data to it. If we want to read an existing file, we are going to use the letter R. Or if we want to append data to a file, we have to use the letter A. If you visit the php.net manual, you will see all the modes that we can set. Now the fopen function returns a resource. In plain English, and in our case, the function returns information about the file, including the content of the file. We cannot output the content with the fopen function, so we have to store the returned resource to a variable. Now we can use the fwrite function and pass in, as the first argument, the resource variable. And in the second argument we pass in the data. And last, we close the stream. Since the file does not exist in our folder, if we execute the lines of code, we will create it. And we are going to write the line of text that the data variable holds. Let's see this. Nice, we have created the file and inserted our line of text. Now let's append data to the file. Let's write a second fwrite function and change the mode to append using the letter A. Let's run the file. And we see the new line is added in the file. If we didn't use the append mode, everything will be erased except of the last line of text. The fwrite function returns false on failure, so we can easily use the function in an if statement. Now let's see how we can read the data from a file, using again the fopen function. Let's remove the if statement and keep the fopen and fclose functions. Now let's change the mode from append data to read data. To read the data from the file, we are going to use the fread function. The fread function takes two arguments. The first argument is the resource variable, and in the second argument we have to specify how many bytes we want to read from the file. But since we don't know the size of the file, we will use the file size function to get it. Now this will return everything from the file, and we are going to store it in a variable. Now let's echo out the content variable. Let's run the file to see what we get. Okay, we have the data from the file, but we see everything in one line, even if in the file we have our text in separate lines. PHP has a function called nl2br. This function is adding an HTML BR tag to every line ending. Let's see this. Nice. Everything looks nice and clear now. But I forgot to comment out the data variable. We won't write any data to a file for the rest of this tutorial. Now let's see how we can read a file with a file getContents function. Let's clear the screen and the browser. With the file getContents function, we can read a file's content. The function returns the file's content as a string or false on failure. The function takes as an argument the file's file path. To access the content, we have to store it in a variable. Let's use again the nl2br function and echo out the content variable. And we have the same result. Now this is how we read data from a file with a file getContents function. Now let's see how we delete a file from the file system. To delete files from a folder, we have to use the unlink function. The unlink function takes as an argument the name of the file we want to delete. The function returns true on success or false on failure. Let's delete the new file.txt. And the file is gone. Again, we can use an if statement to check if the file is deleted. But it is a good practice to check first if the file exists. This is how we delete files with the unlink function. Please be careful with the unlink function. You can delete valuable data in a blink of an eye if you are not careful enough. Now we covered the basics on how to create files. There is much more that we can do with the functions we saw, but I wanted to keep this video simple. And this is all for today. I hope you like it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.